Mhm.
Good morning, everybody. Peter Greatorex here from the Apartment Company, and this is part of a series of interviews that we're having with local business people. And today I'm really delighted to welcome Sarah Dedakis of Bath Leasehold Management. I've known Sarah for some time. We've sort of followed each other around, haven't we, really, Sarah, in the Bath property market. So I think, without further ado, we'll just sort of launch straight in. Sarah, if I could just ask you just to sort of introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your business.
Yeah, hello. I'm Sarah Dedakis. I've been in property in Bath for around 20 years now. I've been mainly in lettings and property management, had my own business. So that was sort of 15 years of doing that. Divested that business a couple of years ago and found myself being asked if I would do block management. And to start with, I was thinking, oh, interesting. Gave it a lot of thought and retrained myself, took a lot of qualifications and went into this business, which is just solely leasehold management, block management.
Brilliant. It's certainly an area we obviously sort of dovetail very well, actually, because obviously selling apartments, renting apartments, we're quite often having to deal with managing agents. So I suppose that the first thing to sort of ask, Sarah, is if you can just give us a sort of an overview in terms of your role and looking after buildings and how that works.
Yeah, so a lot of people get confused between what a managing agent and a management company, because you've got a block of flats will have a management company, and they are, so the directors may be leaseholders, and they will be looking after the fabric of the building, ensuring that the building is insured, and raising the service charges and all that kind of thing. And then they will employ a managing agent, most people, because most people don't know how to do it themselves. So they will employ a managing agent, and we are the managing agent for the management company. So there is a lot of confusion because a lot of people think that the management company is the agent.
Yeah.
We actually manage the management company.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So what sort of responsibilities do you mentioned sort of insuring the property, maintaining the property over a period of time. So what other responsibilities do you take, do you have on a sort of a day-to-day?
Well, there's huge and ever encompassing responsibilities that are growing and growing, as you're probably aware. Regulatory reform is growing all the time, particularly since Grenfell. So you've got a lot of health and safety responsibilities. You've also got to ensure that the responsibilities of the directors are upheld, and the backbone of your management is going to be based on the lease. So the lease needs to be studied in detail, because as much as we'd like one lease fits all, we don't have that. And particularly in the Georgian buildings in Bath, we've got some leases that are actually handwritten, and they're easy to understand as a Chaucer play. They're very complex and convoluted. But then you've got statute as well, which is changing all the time. And of course, the statute overrides what's in the lease. So it's about, being qualified and being able to understand all those different elements, and being responsible for the whole thing. And it's certainly not just a case of getting a cleaner in once a month and, occasionally having the walls painted.
No, quite. So in terms of the types of clients that you have at the moment and the types of properties that you're taking on, can you just sort of describe the sort of, your typical sort of building that you might look after and how that's sort of made up?
Yeah, so we've got typical Georgian buildings in Bath, so that might be 4, 5, 6 flats. And we've got some bigger buildings. We've just taken on one in Bath with 35 units, another one in Bristol with 50 units, a big building with cladding. We've got one that we look after in Woolacombe in Devon, which is probably our biggest site. And that's very complex. That's got a swimming pool, there's a restaurant in the grounds. We've got on-site staff. So you've got the very, very complex ones like that one, right through to the Georgian just standard conversions. So a big range.
That is quite a range, actually, isn't it? So, and what are the sort of the challenges that So let's concentrate on the Georgian buildings in Bath. So, what are the challenges, and what should apartment owners be sort of looking at? When they're considering the fabric of their building, maybe sort of maintenance programs. Obviously, that's something which I'm sure you sort of get involved with and deal with.
Yeah. So if they've got a good managing agent, they'll be starting to build up a reserve if the lease allows that. Some leases do, the majority. Right. So they'll be building up a reserve, and they'll have a 10-year maintenance plan. So when we take on a new block, we sit with the directors and we run through a 10-year maintenance plan, and then we cost accordingly. So the lease will say something like the external has to be done every 7 years, internal every 4 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you would spread that cost over that time. So I think it's important when somebody's buying an apartment if the service charges are very low, that's a little bit worrying, because
I agree with that.
There's no reserve, and that means if the roof falls in tomorrow, then everybody's got to pay thousands of pounds each. So it's much nicer to see a higher service charge, because you think that's a well-run building and they're planning for the future. Rather than if you saw a flat for sale and the service charge was £60 a month, that would be worrying, very worrying.
I often say that, actually. People ask me that question, and should we get a survey carried out on a property, on an apartment? And yes, obviously for peace of mind, that's never a bad thing. But really, the most important thing is to look at the management company, look at the accounts, and see how the building is actually being looked after over a period of time, and what the future plans are. And I think that, as you say, it does sort of tell you give you a lot more detail from a buyer's perspective. So obviously, I know it's how long is a piece of string, but typical sort of service charges now, we've noticed that they've gone up. What do you think is a sort of a reasonable sort of amount that people should be thinking about paying? And I know it does, it will depend on the amount of work that's required on a property.
Yeah, it will. And the insurance as well. So the insurance, at the moment, we're in a very, very hard insurance market, very hard. And we're seeing typical increases. They were 5% year on year. Now we're looking at 25, 30, 50% year on year. We're in a very hard market. And that hasn't even been touched by the COVID claims yet, because they will come out next year. So I think the market will continue to get harder. So if you took the insurance aside, and all things being equal, as they have been, if you were paying somewhere between 15 and 2,000 for a Georgian block, that wouldn't be over the top at all. If you were more and you had a decent, we have got buildings where they pay more because they've got a very, very good 10-year plan and everything is scheduled and they're paying for it in advance. And if the service charges do seem high, then it's wise to ask to have a look at that 10-year schedule, just to find out why they're so high. And it may be very attractive, actually, because they've just got some very good planning in place. And the buyer may be walking in halfway through that. So in a way, they've kind of got a bit for nothing.
Yeah. No, that certainly does make sense. I mean, we've actually just recently sold a property with, I think, service charge is 3,000 a year, but absolutely everything is taken care of, and obviously if they're grounds as well, you've got to maintain the grounds, so that does fluctuate as well. So you sort of touched on responsibilities of a directors of a management company. Now, just like to get a bit more insight for that, because I think that would be an interesting question to ask. What are the responsibilities that somebody's taken on that role?
A lot of people think, if they're a director of a management company, it just means that they get a say on who they get to paint the walls or whatever. And it's a far bigger responsibility than that. So if you're a director of any company at all, you're governed by the Companies Act, whether it's if it's IBM or it's a management company. If you're a director, and you're responsible for all those director obligations, filing your accounts and all of that kind of thing. And then also you've got the responsibilities of the management company. So ultimately, if anything goes wrong, it's director's responsibility. So heaven forbid you get a horrible situation like Grenfell, it's the director's responsibility at the end of the day, which is why, unless the director is absolutely, completely conversant in leasehold law and they know exactly what they're doing, then self-management is not a good idea, because they need to hand it to a managing agent who is an expert in what they do and will take that responsibility.
Yeah.
Ultimately, they need guidance and advice, because they are ultimately responsible. So we ensure, we ensure that we're up to date with legislation and that kind of thing, but we also ensure that our directors are protected as well. We encourage them to be protected, with their own policies and things as well. But yeah, it's not to be taken lightly. It should be considered.
Yeah, it's a huge responsibility, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. So your typical sort of client, who maybe has a Georgian building, are you taking over from other agencies? What can you offer different to your competitors and how, in the way that you work?
Well, I think I can say what the issues are with most people that come to me from another agent. I can tell them what their issues are, and it's going to be lack of communication, lack of transparency, and lack of proactivity. It will be those three things always. So we're very strong. We're very, very passionate. It's a small team, and we are passionate about what we do. We actually care. We care about our clients. We care about our buildings. So you've got that with us. But we are proactive. We do communicate. We have, communication standard. We respond within 24 hours, if not the same day. I've emailed to managing agents and received a response saying we'll get back to you within 10 working days, 5 to 10 working days, which to me is not acceptable at all.
No.
Agents with no 10-year plan, with no even 1-year plan, let alone 10-year plan. And we're very transparent. So we have a portal, we put all the invoices on the portal, so any director can see exactly what's going in the account, what's coming out. They can look at the invoices, the bank statements. We're hugely transparent.
Yeah, that's really good. And do you find that you're taking over many sort of self-managed buildings, or is that sort of less common nowadays?
No, there are quite a few people coming to us now, just saying that the legislation has got too much of a burden for them, and they just feel they can't do it anymore. I really, really would not be self-managing unless you're absolutely confident 100% that you know what you're doing, because it is so tough. I mean, your communal areas, for example, are governed by all sorts of legislation, including the Health and Safety at Work Act. And a lot of people don't realise that the common parts are considered a place of work, which is why by law, you have to have a no smoking sign in communal halls in blocks of flats. People don't know that kind of thing because it's not obvious.
Yeah. It is. That's incredible, actually, isn't it? Yeah, that so much legislation. And do you think it has changed since Grenfell? Well, obviously, from the insurance point of view, I guess that's had an impact. What things have sort of changed the marketplace or changed the role of a managing agent?
Yes, Grenfell has had a huge impact on health and safety and insurance. Massive impact. I mean, we've seen policies go up sort of 100,000 in a year, increased by £100,000.
Really?
Yeah, huge increases. I mean, particularly the London markets, but of course everybody's got to pay for this cladding issue. That's what the issue is. So, and of course there's all the health and safety at the back of that. They've got a lot harder on health and safety. It's always been a legal requirement to have an EICR, an electrical installation condition report on communal parts, but it's something that a lot of people haven't done before. That thing has to be done. It just has to be done. You can't sort of,
you can't paper over it, can you? No, exactly. So have you got any sort of tips or advice for somebody who is not happy with their current situation, or what can they do in order to get themselves back on track?
Well, we're happy to just talk people through their issues and their concerns, and discuss whether or not there's a good fit with us. Obviously, it needs to be a two-way fit as well. We want to have a good working relationship with our clients. And we're more than happy to just talk through people's issues and just see whether or not we can help them. It will be a benefit. And if they're self-managing, we'll quite happily have a chat with their requirements. We'll try to tailor a service to suit the leaseholder and the directors and the building. We look at every building individually.
Sure. So I know, so how long have you been going, and what's the size of your team, and what are your sort of plans for the future?
Well, we're growing rapidly. I mean, we've only been going since October 2019. And already we're managing quite a lot of blocks, mainly in Bath. But there's 3 of us at the moment, but we will be looking at increasing the team quite soon. Yeah, we're growing rapidly. But the aim, the end game isn't to get massive. I want to keep this sort of small independent, like your business. I want to keep that small independent, caring.
Yeah, hands on. Yeah, no, brilliant. Well, Sarah, that's been really helpful. 15 minutes has whizzed by. If there are any other questions that anybody might have, then certainly you can message us. I'm sure, if you have an interest, I can pass on Sarah's details, or indeed you can look up, it's bathleaseholdmanagement.co.uk, I think. So I'm sure if you Google that, you'll be able to find Sarah. But as I said, we've worked together for many years, and it's a really good fit. When we're selling, or indeed when we're renting apartments, it's really important for us to know that that we can have a good relationship with the managing agent. So no, Sarah does come very much and highly recommended for block management. So I think that's been great. So thanks ever so much for your time this morning, and I'm sure we'll be speaking soon.
Yeah, great. Okay. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.